Well, great report there. Just be on the lookout, and whether you see those tax stamps around any of the beverages that you buy. Well, Mama V is always on top of what type of beverages we have on the markets. But that's just on the side. But let's come mainstream into the discussions we have this morning. And we know that an Afrobarometer was launched by CDD Ghana. And basically, it's on the election of MMDs and other aspects of local governance and the structure we have and what the ordinary citizens have to say about whether they have a certain belief in the systems and the people who are appointed to be head of the various segments of the structure. And that's why we've assembled a cast or expert here in the studio. I have here in the studio a Deputy Minister for Local Government and also Member of Parliament for Ikuapem South. Osebun Suamwa is a legal practitioner as well, and he's here. Obi, good morning and thanks for joining me. Another expert in his own right has great expertise in human resource, law, but also local governance in our country. Does a lot of great consultancy for many firms as well as the current state structures we have. Is Eric Osai. He has a doctorate, so I have to prefix it with Dr. Eric Osai. Is an expert, but also Dean of Studies, the Institute of Local Government Studies here in Accra. And we're delighted to have him in the studio. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
But in all indications, it said that about 75% of Ghanaians say their members of parliament, for example, do not listen to their views on critical national issues. And even the issue even transcends to even various MMDCEs that are elected. We know that these findings were part of the Afrobarometer, and which was also conducted among respondents numbering about 2,400. But we know that we have a number of the districts scattered across the country. But let's look at how critically we have to do the examination of not only the Afrobarometer report, but also section of it and how our local government structure is working. And let me start with you, Dr. Osai. Now, what was the genesis of our local government structure in the first place?
Thank you very much. The genesis of our local government structure takes its root from the Constitution. When you look at Chapter 20, Special Article 240, it requires that public administration must be decentralized. And if you decentralize the power through the regions to local government, there should be an institution that will receive the power. That institution is the local government. And the local government is expected to bring this power or to utilize this power to bring good local governance and development to the people at the local level. But to ensure that the local governments operate like institutions that can bring governance to the people, we give them a corporate status. And by having a corporate status, you need a leader. That leader is the district chief executive. That is how come the leader of the district assembly is not called a district president or a district minister. We call the person a chief executive because the institution should be a corporate institution that should be able to mobilize resources to partner government to bring development. And so that is the genesis. And this started around 1988 when the PNDC was in power. And they think that power belongs to the people. So we should allow people to take part in the decision making and then in their own administration. It went on up until 1992 when we're going into constitutional rule, and we decided that we will import those good practices into the constitution, and it has followed up until today.
But Obi, what would you say would be then your summarized fair assessment or not of how well we've performed with the current structure we've had?
Well, thank you, Roland. Good morning again, and to your viewers.
Thank you.
Well, as you heard, this year will be 30 years of decentralization. And over the 30 years, if you were to assess how far we've come, you may say that we have passed mark all right, but there's still a lot that we need to do. If you are to segment local governance into the various structures, like political and administration, legal reforms, decentralized planning, popular participation, the administrative decentralization, with all those things, you see that for each area, we have reached a certain mark, but we still need to do more. If you say fiscal decentralization, the average local authority, how are they able to raise their own funds? How are they able to generate funds internally for them to be able to run the assembly? Or do they have to depend on the center? And if the center doesn't send the money, what happens? So there's still a lot that we need to do for them to be really autonomous as far as the financial arrangement is concerned. Now, if you look at accountability and responsiveness, the challenge we have is that the average person in the local area, how does he get the people running the assembly to account to him? You may be able to elect assembly members, but beyond the election, how do they respond to your needs? How do they account for what you're supposed to do? And for the DC who is appointed by the president, how responsive and accountable is he to the average person? So of course, nobody can say that decentralization has not moved our governance and development forward. Nobody can say that. But certainly, there's still a lot of room for improvement. That is why we are in all this discussion. How do we do the reforms? How do we be responsive? How do we look at the best practices so that our local governance will improve? Because that's what the Constitution expects us to do.
And if you look at this Afrobarometer report, just still staying with you, even though we know that the essence was to give the ordinary citizens the voice and for them to have a certain opinion about how the elected leaders or those appointed within the structure behave, you get to find out, for example, when it comes to how well elected leaders listen to citizens. We're told majority of respondents say their local government councillors and MPs responded only 65% and then 75% respectively, or never at all, or only sometimes at some point in time when they have problems or may not have.
Yeah, they have a point there, except that first the issue is, what do you mean by listening? Is it that they are required to take everything that you say on board? Or is it that they don't even consult you? They just run the whole system. But the other aspect is that how involved are the local people in this whole governance system? There are certain structures that we are required to follow at a local level. Consultation, fora, other communication.
Is it supposed to be integral?
It's part of the law, Local Governance Act. Consultation is critical for everything. But the other challenge is, if you call for a meeting, there's a forum, how many people turn up? Unless they hear that it's personal to them, or sometimes even there are goodies to be shared, that you have everybody coming on board. Otherwise, meetings are held and only a few people will end up taking decisions for the rest of the community. So that is where the challenge is. One, getting the administrators to ensure that they engage in these consultations, and two, getting the populace to also see the need for it and then come on board, so that you say that there should be, because even when it comes to budgeting, before you prepare the budget, you are supposed to consult the communities.
You mean the national budget?
No, I'm talking about the
localized
local level, yes. Even national budget, they consult. But the issue is that how many people know the significance of such venture, or do they just think that it's one of those things? DC is coming here with their assembly members, and those who are ready should go and listen, or those who have the time should go and sit at the meeting. But these are critical things. So if they have surveyed and have come to the conclusion that a greater number of people think that they are not consulted by the councillors, in this case, meaning the assembly members and the MPs, there's really a point in there. There's more that we need to do when it comes to consultation and engagement of the citizens.
Well, the Constitution, 2401, and all its content in 240, give all the indications about the need for the interactivity. And as Obi has been saying, the engagement is important. Why would we have citizens saying in the numbers between 59 to about 87% saying they have not had even the feeling to go and have any contact with their representatives at all, whether they are MPs, etc.?
Well, you see, even with this, it has increased marginally between 2005 and 2017 by 10 percentage points.
Wow.
So we are making some marginal improvement. I think it had to do with operationalization of the structures. The district assembly itself is expected to have delegated units. We have the sub-metros for the metros, we have the area councils, we have the unit committees. So that, for instance, if you live in an area, you don't need to come to the office, the head office of the assembly. You need to talk to your area council or the unit committee people, and things will need to be solved. That is what people are not getting. People have elected assembly members who represent them, but some of them will say that, well, I can't find my assembly member. But you see, that's what Honorable tried explaining. What is meant by listening? Is it about you going to the Honorable Assembly member with your personal needs, financial needs, and if he fails to listen to you, you say that you've not participated or he's not even involved you? So what I'm saying is, they are saying that because we haven't paid attention so much to the operationalization of the structures. And if we operationalize the structures well, for instance, if all unit committees are working in this country, you don't need to go to the main, for instance, AMA office to have things processed. You can go to any sub-metro office. You can go to any unit committee. And in that case, you get people being attended to and people feeling part of the process. So I think that it's borders on operationalization on the structures and then making sure that we also sensitize people. I think there are a lot of people who really do not understand even the functions of local government and even the role they have to play. People, for instance, do not know that the assembly belongs to them. People do not know that it is their taxes that pays the officials of the assembly. People do not know that the assemblies will have to publish their financial statement. People do not know that they have to even consult them before they develop plans for their own development. So it borders on education and sensitization.
Well, that could be cited. Yeah. People have not been sensitized, they are not aware, etc. But if the structures were working, visibility then will be pronounced. Then I in my community at Jekwejo wouldn't have been worried I have to go to TMA and get some engagements there.
It's true. Have been the situation. It's true. If you look at the unit committees, we even had more. We had to amend the law to cut the number down. But these are elected citizens. They are required to run their unit committees, and these unit committees aggregate to form the electoral area. And for the electoral area, you have the assemblyman who is in charge, who is supposed to engage you and then carry your problems to the main assembly, and also give you the feedback and then give you information as to what the whole assembly plans to do or the assembly is doing. So that kind of engagement doesn't appear to be well coordinated, and sometimes it's because of the structures. Structures in the sense that somebody gets elected assemblyman is more involved and interested in how he will survive. He spends most of the time surviving than doing the actual work he's required to do. He only attends assembly meetings, gets his allowance, and then never even comes back to tell you what has happened or what is happening. And for the MPs, you see us maybe at events, and then when at the peak of the campaign, where you are forced to go to the communities and then go and campaign, and in campaigning, you end up telling them what you've managed to do or what you are planning to do. So that kind of engagement should be deepened, and we all need to be involved, and we all need to sensitize the average person that you don't just put the person there or you don't put a structure there and expect it to work, but you have to be involved. There's a lot of work we need to do, because if you look at local governance acts now, it spells out all those steps you should take in engaging the average voter. But as to whether the assemblies even have the resources or they spend time in doing it, that is what we need to interrogate and keep on insisting that it is done, so that the average person will feel governance at the local level. Otherwise, you see governance only at the top or in the air. That is how come people even say that they trust the president more than the assemblyman.
Yes, because on top of my head, I'm thinking, well, that logically will translate into me having less trust for the one rather, or the official or the entity or the personality that's supposed to be in the structure. I should trust more to meet my needs. And that's in all that within the period 2005-2017, all that reduction in trust. What will make us perhaps show the numbers as far as making sure that we trust those that have been elected, and then exert that sense of responsibility from them?
I think what we need to do is, one, engender confidence in them, and then two, involve them the more, and three, adopt an attitude of serving them, and then also delivering on our mandate, especially whether we are elected people or not. We should be able to deliver on our mandate. And then let us respect the citizens' participation framework and structure within the law. Because if you listen to them and the input they give you, you work with the input, I can tell you that they will feel part of governance. Nobody would want to be invited. He will attend a meeting, he will make an input, and the input will not be heard. So I think we should do more by engaging them, in addition to operationalizing the structures. And then again, we should also send a signal that we represent them and that we do not represent ourselves. It's always very important, because the essence of decentralized governance is to let the person feel that he's part of governance. And to feel that you are part of governance, the opportunity to contribute to the governance debate and for your voice to be heard, and the fact that you can get what you need as and when you talk to the structure that is closest to you, means that you are part of governance. In other countries, people are not interested in who the president is. People are not interested in who the Minister for Foreign Affairs is.
They are not?
They are interested in certain countries. But we are, in those countries, you get people being interested in who their mayor is, who their councillor is, because the most closest person to them by way of development is the mayor, is the elected member or the councillor. I think we should help people to get that understanding so that they can hold them accountable.
I see. Now, to the point that we're going to have certain indicate, for example, just yesterday we had a spate of robberies. We've had robberies over the period.
Yes.
And the media goes out, we speak to ordinary citizens, and the refrain is that, oh, they don't do anything for us, and so even when there's an incident, we don't even go to the authorities that are supposed to be responsible to make sure that our needs are met. What could account for that sense of maybe laxity on our part as citizens, and then?
Oh, the understanding of the whole system. For instance, even though it's obvious that when there's general lack of security, or when there's a sense of insecurity, the refrain is will start with the president.
Yes.
Yes, the president will be the #1 person that he will start talking about.
And we like using the pronouns he,
then,
instead of the presidency meaning.
And then it will come down to maybe the Minister for the Interior. Hardly would you hear about the security at the local government level, especially in a metropolis like this. Hardly would you hear anybody saying that. What is AMA doing when it comes to security?
What does the structure say? That AMA is supposed to be, let's say for example, the locality, the metropolitan area, the municipal assembly, and the district assembly is supposed to be responsible for security?
Yes, that's why when you go to the district, the chief executive is the head of DISEC.
Okay.
Because the police command and everything, he's in charge of district security. Security meetings, he chairs security meetings. So that he should be the first to identify the issues and how to address them. And if it's above him, then it goes to region and to national. But if the impression is that, let's say something happens in Aburi, and the first person you think of is the president, that means that for the local security, either you don't know how they should operate, or you have given up. That when it comes to local security, you don't expect the district to be able to manage the security, but you expect maybe the Minister for the Interior or the president himself to come in. So that is how it moves in. He gave the example of a mayor. If a New York mayor talks as New York mayor, he's in charge of everything. Unless the security is beyond him, that you expect the federal government to come in. So in the same way, if we were to look at it this way, it would simplify things, it would make them easier to manage than always putting it at the top and leaving what is below. So that is really the issue. Of course, we are still developing. You don't expect the assemblies to have all the resources. And of course, at the end of the day, even though the chief executive may be in charge of security or head of the security system and chairs it, when it comes to providing the resources, providing the machinery, providing the personnel, it falls mainly at the national level, because it's a unitary system, it's not a federal system. But there's still a lot that the average local authority can do in addressing the security situation.
How has perhaps at the national level, the politics at the national level, perhaps influence or gotten us to this stage? Because I'm thinking, if you look at 48, 248, it says a candidate seeking election to a district assembly or any lower local government unit shall present himself to the electorate as an individual and shall not use any symbol associated with any political party. Yes. Now, I mean, we've got to be kidding ourselves. I mean,
yes.
there are posts that we see green, black, red, and then we see blue, white, and all that, even though without.
Yes, this is a constitutional provision, and thankfully, this is not entrenched, which means that you can use the process through Parliament to amend it. But if you go to Article 55(3), the provision there is entrenched. It says that political parties cannot sponsor candidates at the local level elections, and that is the heart of what we're even trying to do.
Okay.
If you want to elect MMDCEs, and you want to make it partisan, then it means you have to tackle Article 55(3),
okay,
which is entrenched,
right,
and which will lead you to a referendum before you can do it.
Okay, we'll come back to and talk about the main issues on the election of MMDs. How possible is it? How can we make it non-partisan or make it partisan, and why we should? But if we have to do that, I asked a question about the national level and how that has permeated, perhaps created that sense of lack of trust and lack of responsibility being perceived by the citizenry.
By local government acts and then the constitution, election into public office or election into local government should be non-partisan. But interestingly, we feel or see some partisan undertones behind. Political parties may get themselves involved along the line, though it is forbidden. The law does not allow that. So I think that, yes, we are allowing the national politicking to influence the process, but we cannot also separate the activities of local government from the national government, because local government is part of national government, except that the way our local governance structures work, we want them to work like corporate institutions. And there is even some level of independence. They are called devolved units. So we cannot wholly conclude that national level politicking is influencing local level activities, except that by the nature of the structure, we have a political institution being the chief executive, being superimposed on a seemingly non-political institution. That's where the challenge is. And we have 30% of the members of the assembly being appointed by the government. In that case, you have a mixed arrangement within the local government system, and that on its own has its own challenges for development and local governance.
I see. And perhaps that is why for many of the surveys that have been conducted about corruption and perceived corruption, we have an insight with key findings indicating that large majority of Ghanaians perceive at least that some MMDCs, local government councillors, parliamentarians, judges and magistrates, presidential officials and government officials were corrupt in the first place. Yeah. If that is a perception down there, how does that inure or not inure to making sure we put into fruition people's understanding of what the structure should have been?
Well, that is the general perception, and it's a perception which has been carried on for a long time. It's not an overnight thing. The average person thinks that once the person has been put there, then as they put in their balance, it's chopping our money. So once you're office holder, the average person thinks that so it's for us to be more transparent. It's for us to be able to explain how the system works, and for the average person to see that you are accountable to him, that you are responding to the needs, and at the same time everything that comes in has been accounted for. Otherwise, the impression is that you've been put there for your benefit and not for their benefit. So it's a perception that we need to raise, and we can only raise that perception if we put in efforts and structures that will convince the average person that this man has been put there as a district chief executive. He's there for us, but not for him, for himself or for his family or for his cronies. And that is how come, if you talk about accountability and responsiveness, we think that one other aspect is to get people to elect their own leaders. MPs are elected, the president is elected, MPs belong to the assembly. The assembly members are elected, even if it's non-partisan. But you still have 30% appointed by the president and the DCE appointed, and then requiring 2/3 majority in the assembly for him to run his office as DCE. So the average person then thinks that this man is there not because I put him there. This man is there because his party and his president put him there. And it's only the president who can remove him, or unless the president himself has been removed. But if the average person knows that these people have come to sell their programs, how to develop this particular district, and listening to them, this is the best person giving his credentials and giving his programs and plans. This is the most likely person to be able to run the place. It will be one step ahead than this particular situation, because whether we like it or not, elections are won, and then most people think that because they were very active in winning the power, they have a stake in running, or they have a stake in being appointed to run the district. Whereas if we were to open it up, you may even get very seasoned public servants and professionals also putting their hearts in and saying that, look, I think I can run this place better, so vote for me, so that come 4 years, if I have not delivered, you have the option to take me out. And I believe in all sincerity that it is one major step forward, except of course that is daring and bold enough, in a sense that it will mean sharing power, because no one political party has monopoly of power across the country. Every party has its strongholds and its weak areas. So if you open it up and you want to even make it partisan, then it's obvious that you have President Kufuor at the top. But when you go to the local level, you may find somebody running a district who doesn't belong to the party of President Kufuor. And this is very bold and daring, in the sense that the Constitution has given you all the power, but you think that for us to make progress, for us to develop, you should share power. And it's not just sharing the power. You are also training people as to how to run systems if they want to move up and come to the very top to run the governance at the top.
So, Dr. Sen, then with all your experiences and having interacted over the year, would you say then you agree with the findings, especially the over time trends that local government councillors were corrupt or have become more corrupt, surging even by 15% between the period of 2005 and 2017?
See, with the corruption bits, I do not agree with them. I do not agree with them because maybe it may have been influenced by recent findings, recent reports of the Auditor General. Because you ask yourself, the local councillors, how much money goes to them? The local councillors. If it were to be the assembly as an institution, I may have agreed. But then the local councillors, how much goes to them? And this is why I want to believe that people do not understand the way our system works.
What about even for MMDCEs?
For MMDCEs, yes, but even the MMDC, they don't sign checks. You know, I was thinking that they will look at the key actors within the local government system, the coordinating director, the finance officer. These are the two people who sign checks. The chief executive do not sign check. He just approves a warrant and it goes. So I think that it is a clear case of lack of a deeper understanding of the system. And it tells me that if you want to be truly accountable, transparent and open to people at the local government level, then we need to do something more than what we are doing now. Because at the local government level, the literacy rate is quite low. The level of education is low. So what it means is that we should be able to reduce some of the issues to a language that people can understand. That is what we've not been able to do. Because you go to other countries and they try to do that. For instance, in the Local Governance Act, the Assembly is expected to use one language, an English language, that is widely spoken in the area. Question then is, if you want to account to people in these areas, majority of them cannot read and write. How do you account to them? Which trial balance is prepared in Ga or Chi? So it creates an accountability problem there. So as a nation, we need to go around the challenge of how to get our unfortunate illiterate brothers and sisters who cannot read and write, yet they have so much stake in the local government system. We've been able to do that at the national level. At the national level, they have what we call the citizens' budget. So the national budget has been converted into about 5 languages: the Ga, Ewe, Dagbani, etc. But go to a typical local government, and you don't have any of their document translated into this language. So I think we need to do more by way of opening up. It's because citizens feel that they don't understand what is happening. That is why they are coming up with this particular response. But I do not really think that councillors are corrupt.
But then that brings us to the question of how well they perform. And there's a section that indicates, well, the performance as far as what they do in the job. Would you agree with the findings then that the approval ratings for the MMDs and local government councillors just remain stable within the period?
Well, of course, a survey is about perception, and that's the perception. If you look at it, 47-54, it's obvious that people expect more from these assembly members and from the chief executives. And of course, if you look at their budgets, how they generate their funds and how they expend these funds, there's more that they can do. So if the average person is not satisfied with performance, I would agree with that perception, because there's a whole lot of room for improvement, and we cannot say that we are satisfied with the status quo now. So I agree that indeed we should up our performance, and definitely it's because, one, we don't engage enough, and two, we don't work hard enough to meet the expectations of the average person, and three, they think that government is removed from them. So I think it's fair for you to agree that this percentage thing, that performance is only about 54%.
And Dr. Osai, well, in the corporate sector, we will say that when they do rationalization, audit, etc., those who are found not to be competent, square pegs in round holes, who will be removed and realigned, etc. Have we found, with your experiences and your own observation, that perhaps we've elected, appointed people who don't have the competence, don't have the wherewithal, and perhaps are not well aligned to take up responsibilities in the structure, and so contributing immensely to non-performance of those individuals or those structures?
What I think happening, which we need to understand, is that in a typical local government system, we have the political actors and then technical actors. The political actors, you cannot really relate their performance to competence and then qualification, because we ask ourselves that, what have you put a chief executive there to do? The chief executive is to ensure that the technical officers works to bring development. If we don't have technical officers highly qualified, highly experienced, properly utilized to bring development, we are going to suffer. So the challenge there really is, are we able to get the technical officers to deliver on their mandate? It's not about competence. I can tell you that the local government service has some of the best and highly qualified technical officers, budget officers, finance officers, accountants, lawyers, people with their...
What's making them perhaps not be at the optimum?
I'm getting there. The seemingly political expediency overriding economic efficiency, that is, affecting local government operations. Here, if you have a chief executive appointed to represent a central government, but the perception and impression about people is that he represents the president, what then is happening is that if you're not very careful, the chief executive may want to implement development project that may not even have been planned for. And if it is not planned for, it is not in the budget. That's the beginning of budget or financial indiscipline. If you have this chief executive elected, I can tell you that the scenario will be different, because this chief executive has a set of promises or manifesto promises he's following, and he will be afraid that if he doesn't follow it, he will lose the next election. Two, if common fund is not coming from the center, because the chief executive is appointed and he owes allegiance to his political masters in Accra, he can't complain. If he goes out to grant interview that our common fund has delayed, the next day, if you're not very careful, he will be sacked. But if this chief executive is elected and he thinks that he relies so much on the common fund to deliver on the promises he's made to his people, for him to go into the next election and win, nothing prevents him from coming out to organize a press conference, to put pressure on central government to release the common fund. So it is about the seemingly unnecessary interference. So if we can change the status quo, we should move away from appointing chief executive and then elect the chief executive, so that we can have an all-out elective body managing the local government to bring development.
You wanted to contribute to it?
Yes, certainly. Of course, as you said, if you look at the structure, we have local government service. The local government service is in charge of the professionals, the public servants.
With the right competencies?
Yeah.
Certainly, if you go to you have a district engineer at the district level, except that the district engineer may tell you that I have all the competence, but I need the tools to be able to work. Yeah. So if the assembly is able to generate enough funds, they should prioritize and say that district engineer needs this vehicle to be able to monitor even planning and supervision of structures at the district level. But if you employ an engineer who spends most of the time in the office, once a while goes out, brings out a report which is not carried out, obviously the whole system then gets affected. But the most important thing is that the political head is accountable to the government, that is the regional minister, the Ministry of Local Government, and the presidency. Whereas the average public servant who has been recruited to help the system run is under the local government service, which has its structures, which operates just like how the original civil service operates. You are posted there, you are recruited, you are posted there, you are promoted, you are transferred, all those things in the structure. So you leave school as an engineer, you can be posted anywhere in the local government service. You are supposed to then use your professional expertise and know-how to let or assist in running the district.
Well, that's interesting, because just this week, we're told the Auditor General, with all the things he's been talking about, there's a cap. If you earn a certain cap, you are supposed to do all that and all that. And even with the court rulings involving the former GIDA board, etc., then we're told, with all the commentary, that you could be a public official somewhere. You could even just be a normal civil servant, so to speak, not only appointed. And your decision could land you somewhere else someday. That even brought to mind, especially as we're saying all this, then why do we then seem to have a non-synchronization of the local government service and with the professionals, and sometimes you wish they take certain decisions vis-a-vis what the political structure and what their own objectives are, and as a result of that non-alignment, over time results in perhaps poor structures, lack of projects being undertaken, etc., within the structure of the local government service?
I think that is why the election of DCEs is important. We have to start from there.
Great.
We have to start from the head. If you are able to have the DCE position being elective, I can tell you that we can get the structure to be working as required by law. Because at the national level, we have the president as the chief executive of the country. He has his ministers, and the ministries are running. Why can't we do the same for the local government? Why can't we have them electing their chief executive? And once the chief executive is elected, they will come to understand the meaning of the word chief executive. People are not asking themselves, why didn't we call them district president? Because we have worked for them that manage the assembly like a corporate institution. And every corporate institution has a vision, it has a mission, it has a strategic plan. You are working with a team. You need certain key competencies to work with to deliver on your mandate.
On that side, who would ensure that elected officials do their jobs?
Is it the average citizen, those who put them in place, and then there's the whole structure. We have a constitution, we have the laws, we have various acts which are to be followed. The fact that you've been elected as DC doesn't mean the Auditor General will not audit you. The Auditor General will still audit you because you're using state resources, or you use the name of the state to even generate more resources. Yeah. So you are still under governance and a structure. It doesn't mean that the fact that you've been elected for 4 years, you can do what you want. You have to run the system according to law. What does the Constitution say? What does the Local Governance Act say? The Financial Management Act, what does it say? You are supposed to comply with all those things. But here is a situation where you are in charge. You have convinced the people to bring you in. And once you are in charge, you are required to run the show. If you, for instance, you take the mayor of Istanbul in Turkey, The mayor is very powerful.
Istanbul,
Turkey, very powerful. The president, he used to even be the mayor before he became president.
Erdogan.
Yes, you're required to show how you can run a system. And it's based on that the people will more or less promote you to run higher systems. And that is the training ground and training base. But if, with all due respect, the person is just picked because of how much he's contributed to the party or how well he has campaigned for the party, and you think she should be rewarded. Sometimes, if you are not careful, you lower the competency, ability before you put the person there. It doesn't mean that when we go for elections, you get only competent people to run the system. We can go for elections and still get very incompetent people to run the system. But if you take it through elections, we are likely to get far better qualified people.
And that is why we have key findings indicating that a little over 2/3 of those who were interviewed, 69%, agree or strongly agree that MMDCEs should be elected by voters in local government authority areas. I'm asking this. Look, Volta region, NDC, Ashanti region, NDC, MPP. So let's say Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, great president of the Republic of Ghana. And then we have, let's say we had an election this year, home municipality, home metropolitan.
Let's take the Volta region.
NDC people, so how would it work?
Okay, I think this is an area we need to clarify. When it comes to local level development, we expect people to unite for development. Chief executive can be elected. When you are elected, you are not elected to become an NDC chief executive to pursue or prosecute NDC agenda. You are being elected as a chief executive of a particular local government area to bring development to the people. And remember, you, the chief executive, you campaign on certain promises. And as a country, we have a consolidated national development agenda. Every district assembly development program should fit into the national development agenda. And you, the chief executive, you have campaigned on some of these promises. So you come to you are elected, you come to maybe home municipal assembly, you are expected to bring development. There's no way you cannot undermine the president. In fact, you cannot undermine the president, because if you undermine the president, you undermine yourself. But in the next election, you will lose. So when it comes to election, I can tell you it can be NDC chief executive or MPP chief executive. They are going to work even harder. There is the other advantage there, security of tenure. Once they elect you as a chief executive, you know that I have 4 years. The president cannot sack me. Under the current arrangement, chief executive can be sacked at any time. So you know you have 4 years. And because they know they can be sacked at any time, they go into office, and somebody, the next thing is he will start preparing to become an MP. So even if his MP belongs to the same party with him, they will not see eye to eye with each other, because they will then be competing. So instead of them joining forces to bring development to the area, they compete among themselves. And at the end of the day, it is the citizens that loses. You know, so it helps in all directions. But I can tell you that the elective bit would help us move our development faster than the current status quo.
Yeah, of course. Your question also brings in a lot of issues. And beyond a referendum, a lot of reforms would have to be done legal-wise. Because some will say that if the chief executive is the head of security in the district, and he belongs to a different party from the president, how is the president assured of even security in the district? Some of these things should all be looked at again and see how we realign and reform so that you get how the system should work. Even you look at best practices, how is it done in other places where they are not even federal but unitary states, and then we bring them in alignment so that some of these issues will not be, of course. So if a president is visiting who, for instance, who should be in charge of his security? As at now, the municipal chief executive is head of security.
For
so
good reason.
Yes, he chairs the security meetings and decides that this is how we should go about it. As far as security is concerned, not only when the president is visiting, but if a major political head is visiting. Now, if they belong to different sides, some may say that the president may not be able to give instructions to the municipal chief executive as far as security or other things are concerned. But then you align the laws and say that probably the district commander should be the head of security, so that he should be in charge, and the district commander is appointed from the center. You understand? Municipal commander, regional head, they are all appointed from the center. So they then become directly accountable to the center, but not to the local head who is there because of political reasons.
And Dr. Osai, I was doing further reading. So I was thinking, let's say New York or Accra.
Istanbul.
That's right.
Okay.
Accra.
They generate lots of money. Kumasi generate lots of money.
True.
We're going to have Cape Coast, maybe generating some money. Takrady, lots of money.
Yeah.
Asamankesi, lots of money. Okay. And so internally, they will be maybe financially sufficient. So when those elected officials are taking decisions, they are emboldened. But while we have smaller districts, smaller metropolitan areas, they take their finances mainly from the so-called District Assembly Common Fund. How does that embolden an elected MMDC to act boldly against or in the interest of his people?
You know, where there are no challenges, we don't need leaders. That's the more reason why we need them. Because if you are coming up as an elected leader, it is up to you to tell us your package. It is up to you to tell us how you intend turning around the fortunes of the local government area. You know, so it is not about the availability of resources. It is about the economic viability. The assembly may not have the resources now, but if they have the opportunity, they have the capacity to turn around their fortunes, all they need is leadership. If you have a leader who will think outside the box, who will be able to turn around the economic viability of that particular assembly into practicality and make sure that he will come up with innovative strategies to mobilize additional resources. Remember, I'm using resources and not revenue, because assemblies are expected to mobilize resources and not only revenue. Revenue is just a subsidiary part of resources. So if you are a leader and you come in and you have innovative arrangement to bring in more resources through PPP, through maybe partnerships, through doing other things, other businesses, especially when the assembly is a corporate institution, you will be able to support the process. So it's not about the availability of resources. In fact, if all assemblies have resources, then we don't need leaders. We can allow the technical operators to manage the assembly. But because they need resources, including human resources, even how to even effectively use the available human resources to an assembly requires leadership. Leadership is the cause and everything is the effect.
You were talking about the revenue and the funding.
Leading to autonomy and all that.
Of course, you still be entitled to the common fund because it's entrenched in the constitution. That aspect cannot just be amended. So the average district is still entitled to the common fund. But as you said, it even depends on how much they need, because if you look at TMA tells you that the revenue they generate, if you add a common fund is only 8%. 8% to even get to a time that they will not need a common fund. Without a common fund, they will survive. But every district, every assembly is entitled to common fund. That is what the constitution has provided. But it's for the assembly to generate outside the common fund enough funds to be able to run the assembly. As he said, inviting investors into your district, marketing your district, getting partnerships, and then be innovative as to how to raise revenues, and then enforcing the laws in the district so that you'll be able to generate the revenue. As it is now, if you look at what the average district generates, it's still below what is appreciable, in which case they still have to depend on the center. If the money doesn't come on time, then they are stuck.
So then, where are we now as far as the regulations, the reforms, and all that to make sure that we get to elect the first batch of MMDCs?
Well, as we heard the president in his message of the State of the Nation in Parliament, he said that for cost and convenience, we are planning that come September 2019, when we have district level elections, we would take that opportunity to also carry out a referendum to be able to remove Article 55.3, which stops us from partisan election of MMDCEs. So we are programming ourselves towards the referendum in September 2019. But it requires that certain legal processes should be put in place, including placing the bill in Parliament before then, gazetting the bill 6 months before the referendum. So we've drawn a program that will meet all the legal requirements under the Constitution, so that September 2019, if the good people of Ghana decide that we should remove Article 55(3) so that we can have partisan election of MMDCEs, beyond that, then we carry out other things we need to do. Hopefully, if we are not able to hold elections in 2020, because the Constitution says that assembly elections should be 6 months apart from the general elections, then you target 2021, where the first batch of President Akufo-Addo's MMDCs would have been 4 years in office. So if the first term is 4 years, by 2021, you should be ready to hold elections, so that those who want to stay will only stay when they are voted to continue, or they will be booted out by others who would have competed with them.
Okay, so now we have 2019. Then from there, what other timelines do we have?
From 2019, we look at all the legal reforms arising out of the referendum. Because my attitude is that as to electing MMDCs, the bigger majority of Ghanaians believe that that's the way forward. The other issue is partisan or non-partisan. So beyond the referendum, even if the average person says that we should elect them, but it shouldn't be partisan, the reforms should still go on, because it means you still have to do the elections. And I'm saying that if you're not able to carry out all the legal reforms in 2020, the convenient date is 2021, when the MMDCs will have spent the first 4 years, which is a term, so that the next term will be started on.
So let me ask a political question. You mean that first term of Akufo-Addo, no show, just an intent? Your
referendum. No, your show means that you want to go and vote, and that's the end of it. If that was only a show, President Akufo-Addo could have even done it this year, in a sense that the previous government issued a white paper, and the white paper said that the president should be able to nominate 5 persons, and these 5 persons will be sent to the Public Services Commission, which commission will then reduce the number to 3, and the 3 will be sent to the electorate for the electorate to vote for them. So if that was only the show, President Akufo-Addo could have even handled the show by now. But as you heard, he's consulted widely, including former presidents, and they think that the way to go is to amend the Constitution so that we open it up, becomes partisan. Every party or individual should be able to come on board and say that I want to run this district, and then run it well. So it's not just the event, but the processes to the event. So there's still show before the end of the first term of President Akufo-Addo.
Okay, so let me give the last word to you. In the US, the other one, they have it midterm, or they have some kind of midterm. Would you want that type of calendar based on your experiences and your studies?
Yes, definitely. If we have that type of calendar, it will help.
It will mean what?
It will mean us having our DCEs elections in between the general elections, except that by our law, it should be 6 months apart. 6 months apart. That is why I believe the Honorable Deputy Minister is saying that after the referendum, you need to put the legal processes in place and then make sure that by 2021, you'll be able to have the next MMDCs elected. So, but the challenge here is that if you do the MMDCs elections before you go into the main general elections, once some political parties may have won majority of the MMDCs, it then becomes a campaign trump card. Now look, we have already won the chief executive majority of the
Well, is that in the US, etc.? It's used to gauge the public opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
The midterm elections is very important. But whichever way we look at it, we should not look at it from that angle. We should look at it from making local government leadership elective by the people, involvement of the people in the choice of their leaders, holding chief executive accountable to bring good governance to the people at the local level. And we should see it as international best practice, because it is not happening only in Ghana. Western Europe, it happens. It's happening in Namibia. It's happening in Gambia. It's happening in
Cameroon.
Cameroon is happening. So it is an international best practice to ensure that there is synergy or consistency in electing local leadership In fact, leadership from national to local government is a way of deepening local democracy.
I think in Asia, you have Philippines, etc.
As I said, Turkey is a very long tradition of electing councillors and then those who had those institutions. So it's a good thing, but we should not pretend that we will not have challenges, because even for political parties, I'm glad that the survey says that MPP, those who were endorsing this thing, MPP supporters were the highest. It's in the survey before you come to NDC.
I read that.
Yes. But the challenge is that there are still people who think that if you pursue this, you are sharing power. And they are not ready to share power. Why should I win, my government win elections, and then when I go to whole municipality, the person running the show there is not my party man? Because of course they also expect that they should be able to go to the assembly and go and tout their party credentials and have certain favors. But if you share power, there are some places that they cannot walk to, because you maybe have a sitting MP and a DCE belonging to another persuasion, whilst at the national level his party is in power, and he thinks he will be cut off. So you need to convince such a person why, when he's in power, he should share power. And if you narrate that, at the referendum you suffer, because the Constitution says at least 40% turnout, with 75% of those who voted agreeing to the vote. So if you don't do your work to get your 75%, the person will just say that, once I've said no, it's no. Because with all the good things you are saying about bringing elected chief executives, if I'm going to share power and I will not have access to power in my locality, then I'm not interested. So that's the kind of work we need to do to sensitize the people. For WA, or for Upper West in particular, they have even said that we should not elect MMDCEs at all. If you look at the survey, it means the majority want the status quo, and we need to address that.
I've enjoyed the discussion. With Mama Vioso Abuaje, my lead producer, breathing down my neck, I have to bring the discussion to a close. And I've had in the studio Dr. Eric Osai. He's the Dean of Studies, the Institute of Local Government Studies, but also a consultant, lawyer, human rights practitioner, human resource practitioner, accountant, etc. Wabing. Thanks for joining me, Dr. Osai. And also lawyer, a legislator, but also member of parliament for Ikapim South, Osai Bunsu, known to many of us as Obi Amwa here. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Roland.
A man, even after he leaves parliament, will be of good store of knowledge for our republic. But we have to take a break. When we come back, well, we'll be talking a lot more. Do stay on. We want to give you a lot more feedback on what the police is doing, what you citizens also think about the crime wave we have in our country. Do stay on.